If anybody has watched a debate between the Christian Prince and Mohammed Hijab, when Mohammed Hijab actually pretended to be somebody else, which is hilarious, and they actually discussed this. It's like, okay, so how many shaitans are there? And then there is this whole thing. Well, there is the big shaitan, and then there are the small shaitans. All of this happens because of the Quran, because they have these problems. So we have Shaitan is supposed to be one and his name, and that's it. But then you have Shaitan or Shayatina, Satans. It's like that doesn't make sense. You cannot actually have a plural in there. Plus, you have the jinn, plus you have Iblis. You have quite a few words that actually tells you clearly, hey guys, you didn't really know what to write down here, and you have made things up. So we know that there is a problem with that, and Kash and I, we are exploring that one, so we will get to the bottom of it. We know it sticks out like a sore thumb, so it's certainly not going to be devils. But if we look at the options on the right-hand side, as well, just like Kash has said, if you are talking about devils, like flaming devils are not famously comfortable diving, or at least I don't think so. They're not good with water. So if you can actually click once, please. So when we look at that, and the reason why this appears in this manner is because we have at the end of this sentence is bound in chains. So something is happening and it ends with bound in chains. When we go one word up, it would be blah, 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 and diver bound in chains. It's like, okay, what would make more sense if the end of that sentence, although they have their full stop, but there is no such thing as stops in these manuscripts, would it make more sense that the word right before it is diver bound in chains, or would it be hardship bound in chains? So we see that it is now more likely that the original meaning was something to do like that, something to do with hardship as opposed to diver, which makes no sense. So builder, there is the word builder and diver bound in chains. Okay, the word that they are using there for diver, it has a hamza. That is the first thing that we notice in that word, and that has to be removed in order to read the word. It is very close to bani, banu, the same root for children. We have to investigate that, and we haven't actually had a full case here because we were talking about the word mosquito only. But if we are trying to read that in a way that would make more sense, and it's talking about children and then hardship and then bound in chains, the reader would begin to think that, hang on a minute, is this maybe talking about the children of Israel being in Egypt in slavery? Or could it be something to do with the people that actually followed Jesus after his resurrection and they go through hardship? What is it? So it would certainly make more sense than having a sentence that has this builder and diver and then bound in chains. You have the problem with shaitan. So I would put forward that it makes more sense that the word before bound in chains would be something to do with hardship as opposed to something to do with a diver. Also, when we think about how all of these sentences are being put together, we saw the word mosquito and it looks like they got the root wrong on purpose. Okay, so once we know that is when we can actually go to the rest of the Quran and say, hang on a minute. So now that they have misused that root and it only appears once as mosquito, which is not the case, what is the root? Okay, Ain Wa Sad. Right. Does the Quran, as we have it now, lists anywhere that root, Ain Wa Sad, or any other combinations? By the way, that one up there, it says Ain is Gain. Same difference, like Kash said, there is no dot. Or Gain Wa Sad. So do we have any? And when we look at the Quran, there are only other two places where that root, according to the current Quran, they appear. So now we don't have one word to look into, which is mosquito, but we have three. And when we say, okay, it looks like the original meaning of that root is something to do with hardship, we go to the verses the verse that talks about the mosquito. Hardship makes more sense. We come to the other two verses, and they sort of make more sense. Certainly, the one on the right, the one on the left needs more unpicking. And as we go through, we will find more like a much clearer case as to what the other words mean. But I think what happened is if you have one word in these manuscripts that you have to hide, you start by thinking, okay, so how do we read it based on this rasm to change the meaning? So that is step number one. But immediately after, you need to look at all of the words that come before and after, because now you have to make the whole verse match that word that you are hiding, because otherwise everything will go out of sync. Imagine that you change one word from something is talking about, say, Jesus on third person singular, for instance, but now you're going to change that and it's talking about, I don't know, second person plural. I'm just making this up. Then the rest of the sentence would make no sense. It would really show that that word is wrong. So you have to start changing all of the words around it because you have one word to hide. So when we look at the example here on the right hand side, you would end up with words like builder. Why? Because the next word has to be diver. So exactly, and like Kash is showing, we have a Hamza. Now Hamzas didn't exist when this was written. They are inserted much later. And just like we've shown in cases like famously the Quran, like the Hamza is added in order to change the meaning so that you don't see what is actually written in there. The same thing happens in there. You now are going to have a word that is diver. So imagine if the previous word is something to do with children. And then every child and diver, people will be like, sorry, why are you doing that jump? What have children to do with a diver? Just as an example. So this is something as well that we're finding. There is a word that they're really trying to hide, and when we get the meaning, we look around it and we see that there is a lot of dodginess going on. This one, this meaning of hardship seems to be like quite interesting, because just going by the Quran as we've explained, it seems to actually fit better than what we have there. That being said, we have actually put the caveat that the word, if it was taken from Hebrew, it could have been something else, like counsel, which it would also lead you in a direction that the authors of the Quran, or rather the scribes later, didn't want you to read. So that would still make sense. But uh, as we actually dig into that, we see what happens. Maybe this one, like Kash said, they end up hiding something different, and it is not this root, it is not hardship, and it is something else. But for now, because the Quran, the Quran as it stands says that it is the root gain wa sat, it's like, fine, let's actually take you at your word. Oh, look, it's actually about hardship, and now it makes sense. So a few caveats, and as we go through, we can pick more words, and everything will make more sense. So we're going from words to sentences to verses to full surahs.